Welcome back to another episode of Better Than I Found It, the podcast all things college golf. You're listening to Mike McGraw, the men's golf coach at Baylor University. Today's guest on Better Than I Found It is former University of Tulsa women's coach Annie Young. Annie recently stepped down and has accepted an assistant coaching position at her alma mater, Oklahoma State University. Now, most people will question this as a downward career move. However, Annie made this move for the best possible reason. She and her husband Caleb have adopted their second child, a little girl named Savannah Kay, and they couldn't be happier. Annie and I discussed the adoption process. We talk about her excitement about returning to Stillwater and her new and unique coaching experience upcoming at OSU. Annie also describes building Tulsa back into national relevance by making it to the last two NCAA championships. It's a really good listen. I hope you enjoy. All right, Better Than I Found It listeners, let's welcome former University of Tulsa head coach Annie Young to Better Than I Found It today. Annie, thanks for joining me for a second time on the podcast.
Thank you, Coach. I'm excited to be back on.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's a crazy time for you since the last time you were on this podcast, which was January of 21. At that time, you were in the middle of your third year at Tulsa. Your team was building, you were getting better, but your team had not yet qualified for the national championship, and the University of Tulsa Hurricane had not been to the nationals in a long time. But so you were trying to build the program, and you and Caleb, your husband, had one son, Cameron, but a lot has changed since then. So we're going to talk about all of that. But tell me, a lot has changed, hasn't it?
Yeah, a lot has changed, both family-wise and career-wise, and it's a little hectic and crazy right now, but we're headed to a good spot, and we're really excited. You know, it's hard to leave one job and go to another, but we're really excited about what's ahead for us.
Okay, and I want to talk about Tulsa the last 2.5 years because they were not historical, but certainly building. It was an incredible building job that you had done. But the decision to step down from being a head coach and taking a second assistant job at your alma mater, Oklahoma State University, was not a career decision so much as it was a family and a life decision. Because what have you and Caleb done just this past week?
Yeah, this past week we actually got home last night. We adopted a new baby, Savannah Kay is her name, and newborn, and so we all know how that changes life. But added our second child to the family. Cam's a big brother now, and so pretty crazy story, but we'll get to that later. But we're super blessed, and that kind of is the reason we did some of the decisions we've made. But we're excited about what's ahead too.
Well, we'll talk about it in just a bit, but what I love about it is you made a decision that is going to be great for your family. And it can also be great for Oklahoma State because you're bringing to Oklahoma State a whole lot more experience than you had the first time you were at Oklahoma State. And you still have the playing background that you had, being an All-American, being a Curtis Cup member, being a U.S. Public Links champion, two-time Big 12 individual champion. All of that remains, but you've got another several more years of experience in coaching that you get to bring to the table. And we'll talk all about that in a little bit. But let's talk about, since I saw you or talked to you in January of 21, when you were trying to build that Tulsa Hurricane team up. Let's talk about that January, that spring of 21, and then all the way through until this year, the second year in a row of going to the national championship. Talk about how you built the program. Talk about some of the players, all of that. Just get us up to speed on how you were able to build that.
Yeah, so it was, I mean, that seems like so long ago, but it was a building process, and it wasn't easy, but it took some key players becoming part of our program and making cultural changes for us. Lily Thomas was a big change, leader for our team, and she went, she had a great career at Tulsa and went on to play. She's on the Epson tour right now. Grace Kilcrease has been a huge addition at Tulsa. And then good ones, Lorena Sang had a great career at Tulsa, but it was all the little pieces along the way that as we added, there were players that bought into what we were trying to do, and they weren't 5-star athletes coming out, but they worked their tail off and bought into what we were doing. And man, if you would have told me, nationals 2 years ago was amazing to get to and qualify, and then this year Lily turned pro at semester, and it looked pretty bleak at times. We had a rough stretch there of didn't look like we were going to beat anybody, and then we actually went and saw. I don't know if this connects, but I think it kind of does. Is Dan Rooney spoke to the team, and man, he's a special man, and he talked to the team, and since then, we did really well finished second at OU match play, and then played nice at conference, almost got the win there. And then Grace, probably my most memorable coaching moment was Grace making birdie on the last hole at regionals to secure us getting into nationals. It's pretty incredible. So a lot of hard work went into getting Tulsa to where it needed to be, and I think they're in good hands now. I think you always talk about leave it better than you found it. That was my big thing is, if we're going to come in here and do this, we got to make it better than it is.
Well, you definitely left it better than you inherited, that's for sure. And I know it's a proud program, a proud history with Dale McNamara and all those championships they won, and Melissa coached there for a bit. And they've had several coaching changes in the 2000s, but I think what you did was pretty remarkable. Honestly, I do. And I'm not saying that just because you played for me way back in the day. I've enjoyed watching your coaching career. I've enjoyed watching you mature as a coach. But one of the things you mentioned earlier was you didn't have a bunch of 5-star players coming out of high school. These girls that made nationals the last 2 years, they weren't 5-stars. They kind of mirror your career. You were a 2-sport athlete. You played basketball in high school, and I'll never forget the story you told me of you ACL injury with 2 seconds left to go in the game, and then missed a free throw that would have. It was a horrifyingly bad experience to end your basketball career, but you were a great basketball player and a great golfer, but you weren't a 5-star. And I think there's something to this. A player like you who developed your talent and developed it into an All-American status, that's got to benefit your players, I would have to think. Do you think, with speaking as humbly as you possibly can, how does that playing background affect the way you coach players or the way they take your instruction?
I think you're spot on with that. I I had a lot of learning to do when I got to college, and it was a lot of practicing and getting better. It was in the dirt, and that's what I talk to my players about. Is the only way you're going to get better is in the dirt. That's the only way I know how to. So that's helped. But I will say my playing background, it gives me the ability I've been in a lot of those pressure situations as a player, to where I'm not afraid to really help them. One example was on the last hole with Grace. We had a long conversation. I knew where we stood, and I usually don't look at the leaderboard, but in this situation, she trusted kind of what I was saying, and she hit an unbelievable golf shot in there to make birdie. And so as a coach, I'm not afraid to say, to know how to coach you when you're under the gun. And because I've been through that, and I actually turned to her during the round and I said, when we were on 18, I said, Grace, isn't this a lot of fun? Isn't this amazing? And she looked at me like, you're crazy, coach. This is a lot of pressure. But it just perspective over the last 15 years of, as a player and then as a coach too, just to be grateful for what we have. And you don't get those moments all the time. And we've done a lot of training over the years with a guy named Brock Barnes who works with Ludi, and he was a difference maker for us in how we looked at things. But he just kept telling us be simple and have fun out there. And I really reflected on that last day with them at regionals and how we came and got it done when it looked so bleak at times. And I just think, putting all those tools together as well with my playing career has made a big difference, for me as a coach.
Well, you talked about the last day at regionals there. I didn't talk to you about this on the first podcast, but our last day together at Sun River, Oregon, we had won the conference championship at UT Golf Clubs. I mean, in their backyard. you had won the individual title by, I don't know how many, but I think it was 8 or 9. I mean, you won by a bunch. Um, but we went to Sun River with hopes of contending for a national championship. We had a good team, and that last round, it snowed on us in the last round at Sun River. It's really snowed on the afternoon group too, as well. But I remember you shot one of the prettiest, most beautiful little 68s I think I've ever seen in my life. Is that am I correct about the number?
You are correct. I still remember that bogey I made. I don't know what hole it was, but a little wedge into the green that I left it a little out to the right into the bunker. But that was a great finish to my career of shooting a 68, and you walked with me that day. And I don't have a lot of memories. I forget a lot of stuff from the past. I don't have a memory like you, but I do remember that day. And that snow was, I grew up in the snow, and we snuck on the golf course when there was tons of snow on the ground. So that little flurry didn't really bother me that day.
Well, I do remember thinking, I'm not dressed for this. I'm not ready for this. I'm a lot softer than I thought I was. But the 68 was truly one of the great rounds I've coached as a coach that I've been around and been able to witness, male or female. It was a remarkable round, especially in the conditions. And being your last round, too, in college, you were first team All American. So many good things happened in college. I know you were excited about your professional career, but I do remember that. So it's obvious that your playing background did help you in a way. And I'm not saying all great players are great coaches. That is not it at all. But a few have done that. Alan Bratton's done it at Oklahoma State. I think Mike Small has done it at Illinois. There's been a lot of really good players whose teammates, whose members of their teams have benefited because of their experience. But I love the way you dug it out of the dirt. You said it's in the dirt. A lot of people don't understand that that's basically just you're hitting enough balls, it's down there in the dirt. That's where your answer is. I think it came either from Ben Hogan or said about Ben Hogan 60, 70 years ago that the secret is in the dirt. But I think your players figured that out. And I think they figure it out. I think the players at Oklahoma State will benefit this time around. So when you went to Oklahoma State, we both agree it would have been great had you been able to go the first time as an assistant. You were 26 years old, straight off of the tour, and became a coach. And it was a big, daunting task. And you mentioned in the other podcast, so hang in there with me, you mentioned that you thought you might have been a little tough on your players. The competitive side of you probably got the best of you. So that's 12 or 13 years, we're 14 years, 15 years removed from that experience. How do you think that experience is going to help you this next time around when you're a second assistant at Oklahoma State?
Yeah, I think it's going to help me a lot. The part that really excites me about going to Oklahoma State is one, people look at it and they have asked me, why are you going backwards? Why are you going from being a head coach to being an assistant coach? To me, it's not going backwards. I'm not in it for the titles. I think I was in it for the title when I was young and 15 years ago and, took pride in being the head coach. To me, it's the opportunity to get to influence these girls and to help them become better golfers, but also better people, and see them grow. I didn't understand that piece when I was a head coach. It was just about the golf. And now I've come full circle. And to me, to be able to take what I know as a head coach, and I hope I'm able to help Greg. I know what he has to go through now that I've been through it. And if I can make his job easier, we're only going to be better because of that. And so, I think I do a pretty good job of helping players develop, but I also see how to coach them differently, that you can't be the same coach for everybody. Everybody shows up a little bit different. You need to connect. And that's going to be important for me as an assistant coach. Is I need to get to know these girls, outside of the golf course, as well as know their golf game, because I don't know them really well at this point. I've seen them play a lot of golf, but we've got a lot of newcomers coming in as well. And so that's going to be really important. But to be able to know what Greg's going through, the meetings that he has to do, and if I can alleviate those for him and understand that, I've got to step up and be there as a assistant coach for him. I think that's only going to help us. But at the same time, going back to Oklahoma State, I get to learn. I had to be the leader or got to be the leader over these course of the last 15 years. And I still get to lead, but I get to pick his brain and pick Maddie's brain and see how they do things. And I've already, in this little amount of time that I've been on staff, learned a different, technique of recruiting. And that to me is a lot. I've taken in a lot in the last couple of weeks, and I can't wait to see, the differences they do and what I can add from what my experience. And I think you're going to see a lot of coaches go from, quote mid majors to being assistant coaches at Power Four, I guess it's going to be now. And I think it's going to be a change in golf and all other sports too. You're going to see these mid majors transfer into or transition into these assistant roles. And to me, somebody asked me the other day, again, why are you stepping back? That's not how I'm looking at it. I still get an opportunity to coach. I just get to do it at a very, very high level. The people that care about Oklahoma State and the history there, and it's a golf school, you can't ask for more than that. And Carson Creek, we just renovated it. It's going to open soon. And man, it's like a playground for a golf coach. And I could only imagine as a player to get out there on that practice facility and be there all day long. I'm looking forward to it as a golf coach, and hopefully can share that with the players coming in.
Well, you should. And you bring up a great point about it's not a step back to become an assistant coach. Coaching is coaching, period. When I left Oklahoma State and JC will called me from Alabama to offer me his assistant coaching job, I said yes immediately without even giving any thought because it made so much sense to me. I get to stay in coaching. I don't have to leave the game. And I didn't think of it as a demotion. I mean, obviously, I didn't make as much money, and obviously, I didn't have the title. And Jay's name is on that national championship we won that year. But it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter to me one bit because I had an amazing experience and I recharged my batteries and I was ready to go. So you just kind of have to check your ego, push the ego aside and say, I get to coach again. Are you kidding me? And you're getting to do it at your alma mater, which is pretty amazing, I think.
Well, and you also need to think about, Coach, when you were an assistant at Oklahoma State, you affected a lot of people's lives there. Probably more than you'll ever know, but I can remember when you were on the men's side being an assistant coach and how much you helped me as a player on the women's side. And I think sometimes those assistant coaches get a lot more opportunity with the players, just because the head coaches are so busy and they're the one that kind of has to put down the hammer when you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And, the assistant coach to me has really been a big influence in my life when you were at Oklahoma State. And so, you still, the ultimate thing for me is I want to help players, down the road, 15 years. I just had a player get married, and that's what it's about, the
Mm.
good golf and the memories from the golf, but also she's getting married and I got to go to her wedding, and the relationships to me mean a heck of a lot more than they did, I guess,
Well,
15 years ago.
it obviously is showing another way you've matured as a coach. Again, if I had it to do over again, I would tell Mike Holder, let's hire her as the assistant. She could work for Alan a couple of years. Even if I had still been let go a couple of years later and Alan took over, you'd have been a natural, coach after spending 2 or 3 years working for Alan and learning from Alan. And but you also said something earlier that makes sense. You've been a head coach for a long time, but you're going to Oklahoma State, one, to give back to the program, but you are excited about what you can learn from Maddie and from G Rob. It's like they're going to teach me something, and you have something to bring to the table as well. So that's exciting. And humility plays a big part in this, being vulnerable, knowing, hey, I'm okay to go back and become an assistant coach again. It'll be a great experience, actually. But before we leave Tulsa, how hard was it to tell those girls you were taking another job? Because when coaches do that, it's not easy. Talk about that process.
I didn't. That's the worst part of this whole thing, is because timing's not ideal. It never is ideal. I had to let them know on a very difficult day that they were getting ready for a tournament, and timing is never good. I love those girls to death, and I feel like I've put my career first for a long time, and my family's kind of been second fiddle to my coaching career. And and it just felt like it was time to go. But I think the girls understood that too, as they saw the work that I put into Tulsa, and it was everything. I gave everything. And but with this adoption too, G-Rob came to me, and he didn't even know we were adopting when he was offering me the job. He just said, we all need better quality of life. We need to divide and conquer and do this. And why not have a third coach? They're allowing for it, and he said, I can't think of anybody better. And so that's kind of the reason for it. But it was the hardest thing I've ever done. I haven't talked to a lot of them since, just per NCAA rules. Um, so I look forward to seeing them and talking to them face to face, and they're going to have a great season. I said, I expect you to be in the hunt in every event, and I expect you to keep this thing rolling. I think, everybody's coming back, and they've got a great team and a great schedule ahead. And, I wouldn't be surprised to see them at La Casa again, one last ride with who they have. And so, yeah, but to sum it up, it was probably one of the hardest days of my life, is to let them know I was headed out.
Well, that says the relationships that were developed over that time, and that you knew you had accomplished something pretty spectacular with those girls, getting them back to nationals 2 years straight. So that's pretty good. But it wasn't getting to nationals; it was the experiences leading up to it, all the blood, sweat, and tears, all the maturing. You matured. I mean, I can see it and hear it in your voice. You've changed as a coach. You've gotten better and better and better. I think what G-Rob and Maddie are going to have is going to be like the best version of you as a coach yet. But we've talked earlier about you and how you were kind of, it's in the dirt, that type of a coach. You go figure it out, grind it out, work hard, work ethic, all that. I think G-Rob, I don't know Maddie as well, but G-Rob is very much the same. And he came to Oklahoma State unheralded and played 4 years at Oklahoma State and transferred for his fifth year to go to New Mexico. But G-Rob's a dig it out of the dirt kind of guy too. Don't you agree?
I do. I do. I think he's a tough guy, but I think he's also seen the importance of relationships as well. And he does a really good job with them. Um, G-Rob and I have tried to work together probably since I started coaching. I talked to him about coming to be an assistant, and things didn't quite work out that way, but we joke about it. 15 years later, here we are working together. And I think we see, there's no skipping work ethic to become good, and that's what we're going to build our program around. But we're going to have a heck of a lot of fun doing it too. I'm excited to work for him. And Maddie, she's worked for Greg for a long, long time, and so she has that same attitude of we need to work and get after it. And that's what our players will do at Oklahoma State. I think there's one thing that coaches would say to me when they would say your teams are tough, and I took a different approach of, through example, we're going to be tough, versus telling them, you've got to be tough on a daily of just doing your work and getting after it. And, when the weather's not great, finding a way to get after it still and get good work in. And I think that's the attitude you have to have coming from Oklahoma State and coming from the Midwest, is you want kids that can handle tough conditions and can, handle tough situations, not only on the course, but off the golf course. That's just as important, them moving forward in life and being great people, because you're going to have adversity at some point, and that's kind of what I try to share with them, is it's not always going to be easy. And that's what we talked about last year in the middle of everything. I said, what did we say at the first of the year? There's going to be a point in the year that it's going to seem like this is the hardest thing we're doing. And it hit us. It hit us at UNLV, and we looked at each other and we said, we knew it was coming. Here we are. It's how we respond. And they responded beautifully. And this is more adversity for them with me leaving, but I really, really believe that, they've got good tools, that they're going to be successful again at Tulsa.
I think so too. And you've set the table for them to be successful. So congratulations on that. I want to talk about your life is going to change going back to Stillwater. But before we do that, tell me about the entire adoption process. You and Caleb have one son, Cameron. When did you decide you wanted to adopt? Talk about the entire process. I mean, literally, you got the little girl home last night. So it's been a long. When did it start? Take us through the adoption process.
So every adoption's pretty different. Cameron's, we knew we wanted to adopt, went through an agency. Um, so we adopted him when we were in Colorado, and then he kept saying to us, I want a sibling, I want a sibling. And we're like, buddy, we're not getting any younger, And so
Wait a second. He's got pretty big vocabulary if he says sibling instead of a brother or sister. That's a smart kid.
he is a smart kid, but um he wanted this, and he said, and we kind of just we just never got, you really need to get with an agency to adopt. And it was funny in March, Caleb said, I'm getting rid of all the baby stuff. We're not adopting again. I said, no, you have to be on a list to adopt. This isn't going to happen. And so we kind of had moved on from that chapter. And it's funny, I get emotional about this, but it's funny how the Lord works. You think you got all the answers, and you have the plan, and he does. So it came Memorial Day, we were in Utah, and we had heard a family friend was pregnant, and my sister had just told me about the situation, and she had reached out to my sister and said, hey, I'm putting the baby up for adoption. She's a young high school girl. And my sister had just said, hey, if you need any help, my sister has adopted before. She can help you kind of navigate that. And she said to my sister, Megan, well, would she like to adopt her? And
Wow.
she said, you'll have to talk to her about that. I don't know. So they reached out to us. We spoke to them over Memorial Day weekend, and did a lot of praying and thinking on it. And we knew it was the right situation for us. A lot of crazy things fell in place to really show that, what, this baby needs to be adopted by us, and we need this baby as well. Adoption goes both ways. We're able to bless that baby, but it's a big blessing for us too. And so, sorry to be emotional. It's just a big, big
No,
change and blessing in our life. And I don't know how to, G-Rob giving me the ability to not only do this part of my life, but also get to be an assistant. And it just seems like things have fallen in place beautifully for all of us. And so we got her home last night. She's got
give me her name
really
again.
big
Give me her name.
Savannah K.
Savannah
Savannah
K.
K. So both of our families started in Savannah, Georgia. And then my mother's name is Kay, and she's got really big hands and really big feet, and so we're gonna have to get some oversized grips, and she's gonna hopefully be an athlete. But you know what? If she's a flute player, whatever, we're very blessed to have her in our lives.
Well, I know Caleb played baseball and you were a basketball player and a golfer. This little girl's, you're going to make her. She'll figure out a way to do that. Who knows? So the two of you
Well,
have that influence.
I think her brother, more than anybody, is probably the most competitive in the family, and he wants to have her out on the basketball court right now. So we have to explain to him it's going to be a little bit, but I think that brother of hers is going to share his competitiveness and his love for sports, that's going to take care of itself.
Well, you mentioned earlier that it's God's plan that is the one that makes a difference. And we always try to plan things. That's human beings. We're going to plan this. You're at La Costa with your women's team playing in the national championship. Week and a half later, Memorial Day, and this situation comes about. And then here we are in July, and you have a new child at home. It's amazing. And this new child will have a big brother, Cameron. How old is Cameron now?
Cameron will be 7 in 4 days. So,
okay. So
yep.
we're going to have a big birthday party. And then you start school, a new job. Karsten Creek has been redone. So that's new for you. Everything about this life is new for you right now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of the life we live a little bit. I'm fortunate to have Caleb as my spouse because he just kind of goes with the flow. We're fortunate with his job. He can continue. He owns an embroidery business. It's been very successful. We started a yardage book cover business too that he's been, so he'll get to put primary focus on that and keep his clients here in Tulsa. And you couldn't ask for a better situation. It's going to be a lot of work in the near future of getting everything put together, but we can handle crazy pretty good. I will say Brock's taught me a lot about compartmentalizing and just taking one thing at a time. And we're excited. The next 2 weeks are going to be crazy before school starts, but kind of life we live a little bit, and to go on God's plan. I have never had a better testimony of things happening for a reason. He's in control of things, and you just got to put trust in him that what happens is for the good. And there's times when things didn't work out how I thought they would, that looking back, man, this is why. And so yeah, I've never had a better testimony of that, of just put your trust in him and things are going to work out for the best.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And life in Stillwater it's still it's like a throwback. It's like a snapshot in time way back. Stillwater's an interesting place. It is a campus, a university. The whole town is built around that, but pretty much it's a pretty slow moving town. You can raise children there pretty easily.
Yeah, it's a good place to raise kids, and it's familiar to us. And so when we announced that we were coming there, so many friends reached out that we haven't talked to in years. And it just, Caleb has a lot of friends there. It just made for even bigger excitement to get back there. And it's different at this age, because you don't only think about yourself, you've got to think about your family and how it affects your family. And so what a better play. There's not a better place for us to raise our kids in Stillwater. Some of the best people in the country, and they get to wear the right colors now, orange and black.
Yeah, I
Cam's
haven't.
excited. Cam's biggest concern was he's into these flags of flag runners. And when I told him we were going to OSU, he says, well, but I don't have a flag. So got on Amazon, made sure we had a flag delivered soon.
Okay, yeah, taking care of it. But talk about this year's team. I know you don't know them well. You've seen them play, but tell me who's coming back, who's coming in this fall. I don't know about the Oklahoma State women's team right now.
They're young, we're very young. We have some returners. I think Ellie Bushnell kind of highlights the crew out of California. Hard worker, and you'd love this. She's from California, but she stayed all summer in Stillwater to get better, to work at
Mm,
it. To
mm,
me, that's the kind of kid we want. And, a lot of young faces coming in, but Lucy Dar, we saw
mm,
her in diapers. I've known her since she was tiny, and she's joining the team as a freshman this year. And man, does she have a lot of talent. She's got a
mm.
lot of speed, a lot of power, and a little bit raw, but I'm so excited to work with her and get to know her better, and the rest of the girls. Young team, but we're excited. They're ready to work, Greg says, and that you can't ask for more, from as a coach, to have girls that want to work and be out there and get better. And so I'm looking forward to getting to know them, to not, like I said, not only as golfers but as people. And um, I think it's going to be a good year. We start out at Pebble.
Mm.
Never been to Pebble, so it's going to be exciting to walk those fairways and get to be out there.
Well, so it'll be a different role. Um, you will travel, I assume, to some of the tournaments, maybe not all, but you travel to some. The great part about having a second assistant coach nowadays is true player development happens when the team is on the road. So if the team, how many will you have on the squad total?
We'll have 10. So when half of them are home, that's the big thing Greg was saying, is they get left and forgotten about when everybody's on the road. And I think that's a great challenge, is if I'm able to stay home with them and work with them, is okay, let's get ready. We got to beat these ones coming back. That's how you get better, is what do you have at the 6, 7, 8 spot, pushing the 5 and the 4 and the 3. They're hungry to get back in the lineup. And so that's a neat opportunity to get to help develop them. And that's one of the pieces that I really have enjoyed in my work, is being able to help players. And I get to do it more. I don't have quite the same responsibilities that I had at Tulsa. And I think that's just gets me really excited to be out there with them, whether I'm on the road or whether I'm home with them.
Well, I counted up one year a kid who was redshirting, counting the days I traveled with the team and some recruiting days. I didn't physically see him 46 days of the days he was in Waco. 46 days that I physically didn't see him. Now, it's one thing you can tell your kids while you're gone, okay, you're going to play 2 qualifying rounds and I want you guys to practice this afternoon and whatever. But the truth is, it's not the same without somebody there directing it, without somebody there motivating, holding them accountable. I think it's an amazing thing that the NCAA did, was allowing this second assistant. I know not all schools get to take advantage of it, but if you get this opportunity, and I assume with a young family anyway, traveling, you wouldn't want to do as much traveling anyway. So you get to be there. I know you travel some, but you get to be there to develop players. It's an amazing opportunity.
It's a great opportunity. And, what other sport do we leave players behind that they don't get to be with the team? We're a very, very unique sport in that. And Greg is very forward thinking of how he wants to do this. And I really, that really got me excited. It's hard for me to say I don't want to travel. I think I'll do whatever I need to be successful. I think in the recruiting, it's been a big bonus of not having to be on the road every week trying to find players. And, our team or our staff has 51 years of coaching experience. So I hope we can teach them something along the way. Not quite as much as you. What are you at right now?
Just careful. It's not 51. It's 37, going on 38. I will tell you this. Okay. I was there for G-Rob's first year of coaching experience. He was our volunteer assistant at Oklahoma State. And Pam, my lovely wife, fed him dinner probably 3 nights a week, kept him alive. He was starving to death that year. So I remember when it began for him, for sure.
Yeah, that was my freshman year. And we look back and I said, I think I played more ping pong against you than I did golf. But we won't be doing quite as much of that. But he did talk about how he was poor and had no money, and Pam took care of him. And anytime he could get a free meal, he appreciated it. But funny how we've gone full circle in this whole deal.
We have, but that's another thing. That was a guy that wanted to get in coaching so bad. Now, he was playing and not playing that well on mini tour golf, that type of thing. So his golf career was ending, but he could have made some money doing something. And instead, he sacrificed for a year, found a way to make it work, and got an opportunity after 1 year to go to Purdue. And he's just been, honestly, he's had an amazing career for what I can still consider a young coach, but he's kind of a veteran now.
He is a veteran, and, college golf's better because G-Rob's in college golf. He had some great success at Purdue, and then what he did at Kent State was amazing and remarkable. I don't know that you'll see that again at a mid-major like he did. And that's what impresses me is he takes, when it looks like his team is a little down and out, they find a way to get it done. And they did it again at regionals this year. That's what I'm really looking forward to. How do you do this? And learning from him, and hopefully, OSU's never had a women's national championship. We came close, but that's kind of the goal, is to see if we can't do that, bring that home to Stillwater on the women's side.
When I was the assistant coach for both programs, I traveled with your junior year. I traveled with you to the national championship, not knowing I was going to be your head coach the next year. And I have great memories of that week in Auburn. I thought we were going to win the national championship. I truly did, but we didn't. And then, of course, G-Rob had a team finish runner-up a few years back. So they've been close a couple of times. Maybe y'all are going to be – maybe you're the actual ingredient they needed to push them over the edge.
We'll see. We'll just see. Hopefully we can get some good, it's about recruiting. You got to get some good recruits in, and they've done a very, very good job of that. And as I'm seeing how they do it, they've done they've got it figured out. And so we'll see where we go, but we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. I'll tell you that.
Well, I know you will. And I'm really excited to watch you continue to mature as a coach and develop your coaching skills. I'm excited you get to go back to Oklahoma State, your alma mater. But I'm really proud of you and Caleb for having adopted a daughter. And I think it's just going to be a complete bookend on your family. Just a wonderful addition. Awesome. Really excited. Can't wait to meet Savannah Kay.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you for having me on.
All right. It was great. Best of luck, and we'll see you on the road. Thanks, Annie.
We'll see you. Bye-bye.